Hello, welcome again. This is Bhupesh. Welcome to my channel. So, today we'll be talking about the config map understanding within Kubernetes. It's a very important aspect to deploy any applications using either using Helm chart or deploying uh, directly. So before we get into it, if you have not subscribed my channel, you can subscribe it from here so that you can get all the latest updates related to Kubernetes, DevOps, and Grafana, anything related to DevOps world. So what we have done in this series, entire playlist, the Kubernetes playlist, we have done a quick recap of this. We have first of all understood the architecture, what are the pod services and deployment that are having important significance in Kubernetes world. What's deployment and stateful set, and what are the main key differences between these two. How do we apply RBAC? Very important topic. Role-based access controls in Kubernetes. What is a daemon set and how and when we have to use daemon set in Kubernetes. And finally, we saw last video what is the persistent volume and what is the persistent volume claim to be used in stateful applications. Today we'll be discussing what is a config map and a little bit of understanding on secrets also. But yeah, why we use config map in Kubernetes environment, cluster environment. We'll be explaining with the help of these figures so that it becomes pretty easy to understanding. So config map is nothing but a kind of configuration that you want to carry from one environment to other environment, or you can say from one cluster to other cluster, which you want to keep it separate from the Docker image, or you can say from an image which you are pushing it to ACR. So config map are additional parameters, like you have certain environment variables or any kind of key value pairs or any kind of command line argument you want to pass. You can pass it, via config map or any kind of IP address, host name, and how it works. You can simply see, whenever user installs any Helm chart or deploy any manifest, the user posts certain variables. Now those variables actually pushes into the configuration of a node, and then finally pushes to the a kubelet, and then it uh, does the update into the pod, and finally pod gets update from the and pod relate ultimately updates container, and then container starts running it. So typical example of this is deploying a MySQL database or a Postgres database where you want to pass a admin user and admin password. So let's quickly jump onto the quick examples on it. So I've created a GitHub page. Maybe that will give you an understanding on the examples of for this. So in this GitHub page, you can follow this README config map. So there's not much of theoretical aspect, but I will see with the quick example. So there's a thin line difference between a config map and a secrets in Kubernetes. The secrets are used for all the secrets like API keys and credentials, but we should not use config map for that. That is only thin line difference between config map and secrets. And config maps are unchanged. When I say unchanged, even if your data has not changed, config maps are never deployed every time. But secrets are always configured. When I say always configured, whenever you deploy a Helm chart on any kind of manifest, your secrets will always get recreated. That is the main other difference on the config map. So let's quickly see the practical understanding. So this is my cluster. I don't have any pods running on this. So I'm onto the metrics namespace, and this is my repo, and I'm onto this examples folder. Now, first of all, we'll see very basic example for this config map. This is the first example. Now, this in config map, what the important parameters? API version is v1, kind is config map, meta title is nothing but the name of the config map. Finally, we have the certain under the block of data, we have variables like the first variable player's initial value, where it is a key value pair. The second variable, the third variable, which is having a list of key value pair. The fourth variable. Now, all these variables will be fed to a container using a config map. Let's see how it is being fed inside a container. So, this is the config map pod example. So, if you find this variable, yeah. So, what we are saying, whenever we are creating a pod, this is the name of the pod, and this is the container. It is pulling Alpine image. Initially, we are kicking off a sleep of 3600 seconds as a command line parameter. Now this is the first variable, and this variable value will be fetched from this is how we call config map into our container. This will be called from a config map called as game demo, and this is the key which it will look into. So player initial lives will be fetched from this, and then it will be fed to this variable. So basically, this environment variable will get value of 3. Similarly, this variable will get value of this value, right? And ultimately, this reference to this. So this is a kind of typical configuration that we can pass. Now, how this gets actually executed, into the container. Volume and volume mounts. You have actually seen it in your previous video. So what is volume and volume mount? So we are saying that please attach a volume to the container with a name called config, and this would be my mount path. Now, from where the data will be loaded into this mount path, so into volume, we can see name ConfigMap, and this ConfigMap will be called. And ultimately, it will load two files, the game properties and this from the ConfigMap, and this will be loaded as a file or a symbolic link to this volume mount. So let's quickly run this, and then we'll understand how it actually works inside the container. I'll come on to this. It will LTR. So kubectl apply -f. I'll just apply this first config map. Okay, I just recently applied, so that's okay. Then I'll apply the config map pod, which is actually using that config map. Okay, so pod is created. I'll do a kubectl get pod. So this is running. Let me see whether we have any log for this pod. Fine, there are no logs. So let's quickly jump inside the container so that we can see what is happening. So this is my container. So I'll yeah, this go to inside this pod, and then I'll see what is there, how config map is actually used. Okay, so I'll do ls minus ltr. I can see this is the folder structure. Now I'll come inside this, and then we'll see it is being loaded as a config. Okay, config is a directory. So I'll go inside config. Then inside config, I can see these two, symbolic link or variables or files. So you can see these two has loaded into this config directory. Now, if you do a cat of this, you'll see the exact value. Fine, these are the values. And then if I do a cat of the other symbolic link, which is being loaded, this is the value. So this is how it is getting used from a config map to the pod and finally into the inside the container. So that is how we can actually understand how it works. And let me see whether the pod is running or not. Perfectly, it is running. Okay, get config map. So this is my config map, which got created the game demo. Now, this is the first example. Let's quickly see another example to understand in a better way. So, what values we can pass? So, via config map, we can pass key value pairs. We can pass multiple lines, or we can pass a directly file also. So, let's see in the second example what we are passing. Again, we are passing certain variables as the app properties, and that will be used in this pod. See app config. Exactly the same thing is being, and we are fetching how many variables? 4 variables: environment, log mode, log path, and thread count. Thread count. So these are the four variables that I'm passing. So let me quickly run this example as well. Okay, apply -f, and then second config map. As I explained, if it is already created, then it will not do any kind of changes. And k apply -f, the second pod, yeah, config map. Now this will create a pod. Now intentionally I have run this example. So you'll see it. I mean, the config map has properly used, but it has actually it is failing. Why it is failing? Let's see the problem. Yeah, so it has successfully pulled the image, but it has some other problem. So the idea behind of doing this doing this example is that if there's any other problem within the creation of the container, then it will fail. But successfully it is fetching the values from these four variables. Definitely it might be not finding this value, the app home, or something else. But the bottom line of using a config map is passing a configuration things to your container. So let's quickly see the third example. let's not run it because it's more or less the same. So we are creating this another config map where how is vary and it's another variable type is charm. And then we will use this config map in pod 3. A apply config map 3 k apply minus f. Okay. So third pod has been created using the third config map. Let's see. The pod has been completed. So there's no error in creation. So let's see the log of this pod if there are any logs. So there was just a command execution. There was nothing executed. So you can see the vary has been printed in the log. So what we are actually doing? If we get into this pod, we are running a test container basically. Image is this busybox container basically, nothing but a busybox container. And we are running this command bin bash and see cat of this. And from where we are getting the value of this special dot how it is being pulled up from this volume mount, which is actually using a special config or config map. So ultimately this will be called and then special how would be used and the special how is nothing but vary. So that is how you can see the vary is coming into the log. So yeah, this is a pretty quick understanding of config map. So there are n number of applications, or you can say the significance how you can use config map in your deployment. But just to summarize what we understood in today's session, that what is a config map, how we can use it, and what are the different methods to use config map into your deployment. You can either simply create an environment variable or a list of or maybe file or maybe different command line arguments using a config map. So maybe let's not stretch this video further. Next, we'll understand more about secrets. What are the different secrets that we can create in Kubernetes and how to use those secrets into our deployments. So I'll just take a pause here, do a quick review, do a quick testing on your local cluster, and do let me know in case of any issues and queries in your comment section. We'll try to answer and resolve it. So before wrapping up, just do not try to just do a like and subscribe on the channel so that you can get the similar kind of videos in future. Thanks for now. Bye bye.